When engaging in a dialogue about human nature and the complications of ethics that very nature confers on a character, the horror genre might be the most revealing and troubling in cinema. Its power to provoke and unearth the sinister, the perverse, the macabre, and the craven take the audience to the deepest and darkest realms of the human psyche and examine humanity's destructive capabilities, from which emerge either redemptive restoration of the character or its complete obliteration. There is a subgenre of horror cinema, loosely known as survival horror, which does not rely on the supernatural or the exploitative, choosing instead to pit humans against natural forces both within themselves and without. Framed by psychoanalyst and author Erich Fromm's 1947 book, Man for Himself, which identifies the crucial link between psychology and ethics, this essay will explore survival horror through the growing doubt of human autonomy, which has created a state of moral confusion where man is left without the guidance of either revelation or reason. Erich Fromm was a 20th century psychoanalyst and the first psychologist who championed the psychic determination of ethics from a psychoanalytic point of view, specifically character orientations and how they inform moral characters and behaviour. Fromm distinguished between equivocal human behaviour and specific behaviour driven by conscious or unconscious strivings to establish a basis for subjective and objective moral norms. It is through Man for Himself that survival horror's concerns with the ethical question of what is good for humankind and what is bad for it can be examined, and therefore how characters in such movies reach a state of totality in relation to the discovery of their full potential. In the seminal survival horrors to be examined under an ethical purview, all characters are in search of something, a purpose to fulfill an emptiness or even unconscious need to reach their potentialities. One of the most prominent and notorious survival horror films is John Borman's 1972 cult classic Deliverance, which follows four men on a rural retreat from their city lives. Each man requires a development of their total personality, and it initially seems as though Burt Reynolds' Lewis Medlock is going to be of primary concern. Here is a survivalist who proclaims a desire to return to a more natural state, convinced of the collapse of Western society, and determined to make the most of the wild country before developers industrialize the area and dam the Cohahlawasi River into a lake. Lewis believes his character's totality lies in complete rejection of technology and authority, symbolically choosing a bow and arrow to hunt with, but his Robin Hood ideals are rebuffed by a debilitating injury in the rapids, and he is reduced to a state of helplessness. Desperate for a relief and salvation only the state can provide, in form of medical assistance. Lewis's incapacity consequently switches responsibility onto the genteel family man, Ed Gentry, played by Jon Voight, to lead the group to safety. Gentry claims, quite sincerely, that he is happy with his life, but cannot quite answer Lewis's question as to why he keeps accompanying Lewis on their off-grid expeditions. In picking up Lewis's survivalist mien and scarred by the attack on he and Bobby Tripp, Ned Beatty, by the Mountain Men, Ed goes to hunt down the surviving hillbilly with the bow and arrow, his success in doing so and guiding the injured Lewis and weak, vulnerable Bobby out of the Cohahlawasi, ensuring he reaches his true potential of a powerful and capable leader. Though Ed weeps at the dinner table for the lost sanctity of his cosseted city lifestyle, knowing his innocence can never be recovered, his newfound inner strength sees him become a man on his own terms, a man for himself. Ed's discomfort also points to the social ethical conflict he has to overcome. Ed is disturbed that he has to reason between subjectivistic and objectivistic ethics, unable, at first, to comprehend that choosing a humanistic approach to resolve their perilous situation does not necessarily result in rejecting objectivistic morality. Objectively valid, in Fromm's terms, is not absolute. Ed has to distinguish between facts and values, and the nature of all life is to preserve and affirm its own existence. He must kill the predator before he becomes prey, to protect the vulnerable in society, Bobby and the injured Lewis. The facts are they will be killed if Ed does not act. His values are to protect the weak and uphold preservation of his comfortable life that ensures he continues to live happily. The mountain men represent wild, untamed nature, and Ed has to reconcile his taming of this, hence his retrospection in the film's closing scenes. Ed's purpose, ultimately, is to accept he is on the side of the developers, and wants to control nature, not live at its mercy. In this sense, he is a leader of civilization, and this is the potentiality of character he must attain. The other men in the group have to accept their place under civilization's objectivistic ethical norms. It brings Lewis's recklessness to heel. Bobby is abused when free of civilization's rules, requiring its leaders like Ed to protect him from rapacious nature. And in the tragic case of Drew, his subjectivistic moral belief in the laws of humanity leave him incapable of adaptation to the objective facts and values of the group's immediate state, and thus his obliteration by them is inevitable. Southern Comfort. Walter Hill's 1981 mud-soaked bayou-set horror thriller about a squad of National Guardsmen drawn into a life-or-death stakes confrontation against Cajun hunters focuses on the character totality of the glib, facetious Spencer, played by Keith Carradine, and the cynical Hardin, played by Powers Booth, but has a wider concern with humanistic versus authoritarian ethics. On the face of it, Spencer and Hardin break away from the petty rules and regulations of their unit, embodied by Les Lanham's purposeful, but incompetent and distempered Casper, after the murder of their squad leader Paul, Peter Coyote. Realizing Casper is an irrational authority in their situation and relative in terms of the anxiety and helplessness of the person submitting to this authority, Spencer and Hardin first question, and then reject, Casper's leadership, with Hardin killing the unpredictable enforcer of the irrational authority Reese, Fred Ward. Spencer is then nominated leader of the squad as a symbol of rational authority which, as Fromm notes, is always temporary, its acceptance depending on its performance. Spencer assumes the role of rational authority with some discomfort, feeling it only necessary to continue his perceived destiny towards individual freedom, but not desirable. Hardin simply wants to live, to return to his comfortable city life and wife that he loves, accepting he will do whatever it takes to get there. They begin to believe they are humanistically guided away from the clutches of destruction. However, when the two are entrapped in a Cajun town and the hunters are closing in, Hardin is shot and at the mercy of one of the hunters. Hardin is compromised because, although he adheres to the principle of humanistic ethics in that good is what is good for man, he fails to reject egotism or isolation in his pursuit of his own ends. Spencer is able to save Hardin temporarily from the hunter, as Spencer does comprehend to a degree that his purpose can only be fulfilled by relating to the outside world. However, he does not have the complete conviction that he can dispense with authority altogether, and he is a prime example of Fromm's reference to harmonizing ideologies, supported by consensus or authority, where man's mind is appeased, although he himself is not entirely set at rest. Ultimately, neither Spencer nor Hardin has the full conviction of their principles, dooming both characters in the final scenes to subjection to the authoritarian state, symbolized by the approaching army unit. In Steven Spielberg's iconic Jaws from 1975, the conflict between authoritarian and humanistic ethical norms and its impact on character potentiality is portrayed most directly. The irrational authority, the great white shark itself, devours indiscriminately, preying on humanity's biological weakness. Man is the most helpless of all animals, but this is the basis for his strength, the prime cause of the development of his specifically human qualities. People are self-aware, imaginative. They can envision the future and foresee death. The shark draws Brody, Quint and Hooper out into the ocean by inviting them to challenge its authority through their shared imagining of destroying the monster. There is also a more rational authority challenging the trio's humanistic ethical approach, that of Mayor Vaughan, Murray Hamilton, who insists the beaches of Amity Island must be kept open at all costs. Vaughan is rational in his authority, as Amity Island can only survive through tourist trade, with the resulting economic impact of closures potentially devastating for the community. It is only when Vaughan's own humanistic sensibilities are compromised, his ability to imagine his own children falling victim to the shark, Does he relent and allow the beaches to be closed while Brody deals with the irrational authoritarian threat? In chartering the Orca and heading out to confront the shark, Roy Scheider's Brody completes his own character's journey and the realization of his full potentiality by learning to be brave, to be a true leader and not just an appointed one, to be the man he feels his wife and children wish him to be. Brody is part of what could be described as a warrior society in Amity. Courage and initiative are prized values, identifiable in the hushed respect for Quint's proposal to hunt down the shark, and Ellen Brody's positive response to Hooper's dinner table tales, Brody there comprehending the younger man's passion and ingenuity, in stark contrast to his own cautiousness and forbearing. As Brody yells with elation at finally destroying the shark, he shows the reaction of his total personality to its proper functioning, an effective response that affirms he has proved himself to himself. As Fromm states, conscience is thus a reaction of ourselves to ourselves. When confronted with nature in its unbridled force, man is also confronted with his existential dichotomy of both transcending nature and trembling before it. He is part of the world and detached from it simultaneously. It is this constant state of disequilibrium that survival horror explores to lead characters through to their next state of being, whether it is Chief Brody's affirmation of self, or something more disquieting such as inevitable submission to authoritarian ethical norms. For Spencer and Hardin, Deliverance, Southern Comfort, and Jaws may be the most significant representations of the survival horror in cinema, though we can see Fromm's ethical theories in the world-building and characterization of other types of this film, such as the disintegration of the illusion of celebrity in Fabrice de Velt's The Ordeal from 2004, or the rejection of patriarchal authority in Coralie Faget's feminist revenge thriller, Revenge from 2017. Survival horror films seek to resolve, through character development, the conflict between authoritarian and humanistic ethical norms into a universal and socially immanent set of ethics, respectively. Universal aims result in the growth and realization of a person's true potential, whilst social immanence sets the standards for a specific kind of society and sets rules by which people can objectively live by. Determining what is subjectivistic and what is objectivistic, and, more importantly, how to rationalize both to harmonize and negate contradictions in humankind's ethical existence, is the goal of survival horror narratives. To use Fromm's explanation, this split in man's nature leads to dichotomies because they are rooted in the very existence of man. They are contradictions which man cannot annul, but to which he can react in various ways, relative to his characters and culture. Survival horror explores the uncomfortable truth between what people can realize about themselves and what they actually do, by acknowledging the forces that both bind human beings to the world they inhabit and, at the same time, set them apart from it.